All hands back at battle station.
Broadcasting live on the UnitedWest.org AM radio network, simulcasting on DirecTV, iHeartRadio, Roku, and the World Wide Web. This is Enemies of the State with Tom Trento.
All right, you are 21 years old, and you plan the assassination of African-American Christians, not as they're walking on the street, not as they're exiting their church, not as they're entering their church, but you plan the execution of as many people as you can kill at one time, bar one, so that the story can be brought back in the middle of a Bible study in an evening where they are there worshiping God. Okay, what type of person, I want you to think this through, what type of person does it take to think, plan, organize, implement, then exfiltrate from the scene to make a getaway? What type individual can do such an act? Well, this is a complex situation that's occurring in Charleston, South Carolina, that occurred today on the 18th of June, Thursday. Tom Trento, your host, Enemies of the State. 7 minutes after, right now on the East Coast in Florida. 7 minutes after 4 o'clock, Tom Trento, Enemies of the State. As I said, man, if this kid's not an enemy, I don't know who is. But it's going to be very difficult for the leftist psychobabblists, talking heads on TV, because simply and continually they like to take victims of society like this and lay out some sort of convoluted psychobabble plan as to how he had a bad childhood and, you know, he was deprived of whatever, or he got beat up by black people somewhere. Whatever the case may be, it's going to be a little hard for the left psychologists to argue apologetically for Dylan Storm Roof. That's his name, Dylan Storm Roof. D-Y-L-A-N-N, middle name Storm, last name Roof, 21 years old. Ironically, went to a high school in South Carolina, integrated, very integrated, and has more friends on his Facebook page who are black than who are white. The unraveling of the story is going to happen because he has been apprehended. Usually these cases end with the guy swallowing their own revolver. But I will simply say that this guy is not nuts. You can't be nuts and contemplate a plan like this, execute, implement the plan, escape, and then get on with things if you're demented and aren't capable of putting two thoughts together. This is simple, the articulation and the elucidation of evil. The left has determined in human nature that there is no evil, that everybody basically is good, that the social conditioning determines the behavior of the individual. So if you want good people, create an environment where everything is good for them and they de facto will be good. That flies in the face of the Judeo-Christian worldview upon which this republic was built, which says there are evil people and there are good people. The role of government is to enhance the good and to suppress the evil. That's one theory of life that makes more sense than the leftist theory. If that theory is true, the Judeo-Christian theory, that inherently people are evil, this kid is an evil person who did an evil deed and he has to pay for it. And historically, that's through capital punishment. He is not a suspect. He's on camera entering the place with eyewitness, at least one eyewitness, who saw him, who he spared her life so she could tell the diabolical story that he implemented where he wanted to kill black people. Stay tuned, but the big idea for this opening of our Extortion 17 show, folks, is that there is evil in humanity. And we see it here in Charleston, and as we get to Billy Vaughn and Don Brown and continue in our uncovering of the cover-up of Extortion 17, you'll see there's evil in the Islamic fighters that the United States is up against, and there's evil in the United States government for covering up such a horrendous act that occurred on August 6, 2011. Tom Trento here with the boys. Hey guys, before we get to Billy and Don, what do you make out of a 21-year-old kid going into a historic black church in Charleston?
Well, here's what blows me away. The guy didn't just walk in there and start wailing and opening it up and start firing at these kids, at this church. He went in there, sat down in the church for over an hour during the service and waited to do this. I mean, this was so premeditated and calculated and cold. How can you sit next to someone for an hour in church? And then this, I don't care if it's your most hated enemy. How can you sit down next to someone and pull out a gun and just start killing people?
No, Mark, that's a very good point, because this was not the Black Panther meeting where it's the mother effing whitey honkies, we got to get them, This was not that. I'm a Christian. I've been in black churches all over the country and worshipped in these churches, and I could tell you exactly what was going on at that church.
Oh, they're celebrating? Yeah.
They're praying. They're praying to Jesus. They're having a Bible study. They're reading the Bible, talking about it. And the leader, who was a state legislator, is saying, how can we live better lives from what we have to do? How can we be better people? How can we help our fellow men? And this kid is sitting there listening to the clear elucidation of the love of Jesus Christ, the love of Christianity. And he's got to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, I'm going to shoot her in the head over here, I'm going to shoot him over here. What about if that happens? What about? That's evil, man. That is evil, let me tell you.
And this also, and understand, I've been to Charleston, and it's a beautiful, wonderful town.
It is a cool little town.
And, I mean, it's just the most down-to-earth people in the world, and my heart really goes out to them, because this is not like going into some hood area that he did this. This is, everybody there, black, white, everybody is just fantastic people down there, and it just really blows me away.
And it's the AME Church, which is the African Methodist Episcopal. I got long names down there. Yeah. But the Emmanuel AME Church that it took place in. Before we tune out of this, if you could grab real quickly, one of you, his Facebook page, Dylann, D-Y-L-A-N-N, Roof, R-O-F-F. See a weird picture. He's in the woods. He just put this up May 22nd, and he has the flag of Rhodesia on his jacket, which is very, very strange. But again, he's alive. He wasn't killed in being captured, and he's gonna, he probably has a political agenda of some sort. I'm very interested in his parents, his friends. And we'll find out more about this, see what's going on.
And here comes the Al Sharptons. I'm just
the Al Sharptons, the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a mafioso organization, a criminal syndicate. I bet you they got 20 fundraising letters out already saying, you see, whites want to kill blacks. That's why you need us, the SPLC. We don't have enough. We only have $250 million cash on hand. We need more money. They're praising Allah, and CARE and the Muslim organizations are praising Allah that it wasn't a Muslim who shot up a church, but it was a white boy that shot up a church. Yeah, this is how upside down these people are.
There's his Facebook page you were talking about.
So, yeah, there it is. Look at that picture. He's in the woods with this bizarre satanic...
He looks possessed.
Look, he does look possessed. And, look, Satan's for real, and some people choose to worship Satan. This guy's Satanist, who knows? He certainly isn't a Christian. He certainly isn't a Jew. And
he certainly doesn't look Muslim.
No,
he's not a Unitarian.
Doesn't look Muslim.
I wouldn't rule that out.
And this isn't a classic Muslim jihad attack, because they'd be praising Allah and saying they did this for the sake of jihad. So this is not a terrorist jihad attack. It has nothing to do with Islam at this point anyway. We'll see. He may be some white supremacist. He is not, and you're going to hear this a lot, he's not a whack job, nut job. He's not that.
He's not a lone wolf? He's not a lone wolf?
No, he's not a lone wolf. He's a lone roof. He's a lone roof.
All right.
All right. Well, it's our weekly investigation of the horrendous investigation of the shoot down of Extortion 17. And do we have our boys with us right now? Somewhere from up north of here. Anyway, do we have two guys together in one room today?
Yes, we do.
Double trouble?
Double trouble.
Let's take a look at double trouble there. And for our viewing audience at 15 minutes after, you're on WSBR radio out of South Florida, Tom Trento, 740 on your AM dial. If you want to listen through iHeartRadio, go there. Go to WSBR, Boca Raton Radio, 740 AM. Lock it in. I spoke the other night at a Women's Republican Club meeting. Locked it into a lady's phone. She said, I'm gonna listen to you guys all the time.
Good.
At midnight tonight, the replay of our show on redstatetalkradio.com, Red State Talk Radio. We are on air there, and if you can't catch all of us now, only a little bit, and you're going to be working the graveyard shift, or that's midnight East Coast time. That's 7 o'clock in the morning in Europe.
Right.
You can listen on redstatetalkradio.com.
Our noontime.
It's 9 o'clock in that state that gives free health care to illegal immigrants.
It's 9 o'clock there. I mean, wherever you are, you can find us, and you should find us.
They shut off the water to towns and give free medical care to illegal people. You go, Governor Brown.
Yep.
Not our Brown, the other Brown.
I spent so much time in that state that I determined I would never live. You're never supposed to say never. I'll never live in the state of California. Too much traffic, too many crazy people, and too much smog, particularly in the big cities. Got to live by an ocean, and the oceans are too cold over there. Hi, where's our guys? I don't see them. There they are.
You're babbling along.
There's double trouble. Double trouble. Billy Vaughn, screen left, and Don Brown, author of Extortion 17, call sign Extortion 17, the shoot down of SEAL Team 6. And this is Don, thank you for sending me this copy. I also got the hardbound copy. Mark just read it. Mark, what were your thoughts on Don's book?
Absolutely outstandingly amazing. I thought I knew what was going on with Extortion 17, but the more and more I read it, the more and more I'll give you an idea of what I did. I was so upset. I printed out all 1,250 pages of the
Cult report.
And bound it to go back and do reference back material for it. I mean, it is just that amazing. Just the preponderance of evidence of the cover-up. It is just amazing, from everything from the bullets in the bodies that were thrown away, to cremation of bodies, to who's on the aircraft, to the black box, to it's just so many, things that are just, oh my God, this is an absolute cover-up.
And Don, along those lines, Damon and one of our other guys was up in Boston last week at an event, and there was a lieutenant commander, retired SEAL team, SEAL commander, and he was there. And I spoke with him on the phone a day after, told him about the investigation we're doing now and your book, and he said, I want to be involved. I mean, I got to get involved in this. So I'm going to need from you, Don, off air, I'll send you. We're going to need like a box of books here, because we're going to selectively send these books out to some of these key people. Our plan is our weekly investigation to unravel this, get enough interest, and get a team of people together that have some gravitas, SEALs, retired SEALs that'll speak out, and others, and then make a move on the United States Congress to reopen a proper investigation. How is the book doing right now? It is out, from what I understand, right?
It is, and we're grateful. We were I was able to be on Sean Hannity's show last week with Billy's better half, Karen, and she's always a great interview. Sean was kind enough to give us half an hour. We've gotten some national traction. There was an article in the Washington Times a couple of weeks ago, June 4th. And then this past Sunday, the New York Post did an op-ed on the book, and also on the situation, revisiting of what had happened. And what's amazing, Tom, is so many folks, and I've been speaking locally here around North and South Carolina quite a bit since the book came out, and it's astounding when folks hear about this, they've never heard about it to begin with. We're so preoccupied with whatever Bruce Jenner is doing and these other silly, nonsensical type of things, whether a black woman wants to be white or white, whatever it is, that, these guys are forgotten. and it's an absolute tragedy. But the book is doing well. We appreciate your quest for truth, and thank you for having us here today, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we keep digging and digging and digging. And it's interesting how the world works like that. I mean, when this happened, it was a big news item. And then like everything else, it gets pushed off the front page. But people like Billy and others kept up the fight. But then that becomes a very small universe of people that are sort of out of the mainline media spotlight. But with the beauty of this alternative media now, we can keep this thing alive. But many of the people I've spoken to, Don, said that your addition and contribution to this issue is just unparalleled. And here's why this is so important. And Billy, I want you to comment on this, then we'll get into some of the material. There's two elements to August 6, 2011. One was the shoot down and the greatest loss of a naval spec, warfare life in the history of the Navy, and the souls that died horrendously. But there's also the second component, which is a special operational activity fighting the global Islamic Jihad. These guys died, but the operations have continued. One of the reasons we're all staying on this is because the operations have continued, and we don't want to see more guys die because of the same mistakes. That's why we're pursuing this. Billy, your thoughts?
Well, that's absolutely right. That's why Karen and I keep up the fight. I mean, we want to know about the cover-up that happened with Aaron. We do. We want questions answered. But the ROE, the way that they operate, is continuing. There are many special operations men and also special forces men, and some of their families who have spoken to Karen and I and said, please keep speaking up. We've got to have things changed, and you don't even have to have that. You can look at the TV, you can look at the news, you can hear Air Force pilots saying right now these ROEs are keeping us from doing our job over in Syria and Iraq and places like that. And so our military continues to be dismantled, demoralized, and not allowed to do what they are capable of doing. And it's hurting the morale in the military. It's also hurting the security of our republic and of our allies.
We're sending these special operators into harm's way with their arms tied behind their back. I mean, can you imagine if at D-Day General Eisenhower had said, "Okay, we're not going to have the Navy shell the living, out of the beaches at Normandy." Because we want to win the hearts and minds of the French people, and we're afraid of friendly fire. We're just going to send our guys into German machine gun fire without any softening of the beachhead. That's how foolish this is. And Billy's right. We've got to save their lives, and we need to call attention to it because there are other parents like Billy and Karen whose sons are going to be facing these types of things. We cannot allow these rules of engagement to stand.
No, and another reason why we're doing this weekly show, we're laying down a record of the investigation, a more detailed record than has ever been laid down, and we're going to be putting this up as a segment, what do we call it on our
playlist?
Playlist, so that we can point people who need to know this to this, that get them spooled up and prepared to talk intelligently about it. So we're laying all of this down right now, and we'll probably put 20 hours of material down, and then start approaching people, particularly people running for the president in 2016. We got 508 days from today until that happens. And we're going to start challenging them, and they'll have their staff read this stuff. And we know how Washington works. Their staff has to read it. And we've got to make the argument that this is important because Obama has an incoherent national security policy. We know that. We know his national security policy is incoherent. He has distanced himself from Israel. Israel's on the brink of a possible military operation right now over in Syria because the rebels, whomever they are, they're bad guys, they are attacking the Syrian Druze, D-R-U-Z-E, Druze community. And Billy, when we were in Israel together, we met some of the Druze at a restaurant, that big restaurant in the Druze community. And the Druze are connected to the Druze in Syria are connected to the Druze in Israel by a make-believe line on the ground, a border. And now Netanyahu just today said, if they go after the Druze community, we're going to have to do something. That inserts Israel in Syria, which Israel's been trying not to do. And we know this administration is going to condemn Israel probably for that. This whole thing is incoherent, and President Obama's answer to all of this is special forces, special operators, Navy SEALs, Delta Force. Yeah. What are they, magic men that never die? No, we're proving they die, and they die because of bad leaders and bad policy. That's why we're laying this down. Don, what I want to do on page 284 of the big book, I think it's chapter 55, you have the 11 points that point to a cover-up. I want you to briefly go through that for our new viewers and listeners at 26 minutes after. Then I'm going to, if I could keep from vomiting on my desk here in the studio, I'm going to ask you guys about this little book that I got my hands on. Can you see this, Don?
Here, let me zoom in on it for you.
Here,
Don.
zoom in on it.
Yeah, go to camera 2.
Got it. Oh my goodness. You're looking, I think, at the transcript of the subcommittee hearing. Is that correct, Tom?
Well, if you look at the title, Afghanistan, Honoring the Heroes of Extortion 17. Right. I bought a book that that the government, United States government, put out that honors the heroes of Extortion 17. Well,
Tom, the reason I asked the question is because the subcommittee hearing chaired by Congressman Chaffetz in February of 2014, that was the title of the hearing, Honoring the Heroes of Extortion 17. So when you showed me that, I thought, well, maybe he's got a published transcript of that hearing, because that's exactly what they call the hearing. They didn't ask any questions, concerning what happened to shoot down. That's exactly what they call the hearing on February, was the 27th, Billy?
I believe that's what it is, because Doug Hamburger sent me a picture of that in a text, and Karen looked it up, and I think I remember her saying, yeah, I've seen this. This is to do with the hearing. Is that what it is, Don?
$25 for what I thought would be a book that somehow was honoring these guys. This is a transcript of that stupid hearing.
That wasn't a hearing.
And all they did, they added in, and if we have time today, if not, we'll do it next week, they added in 3 or 4 of the letters from some of the parents, which deserve, what I was going to do, I was going to ask both of you guys some of the questions that the parents raise in here. And that was going to be the overview of our show. We're getting many people who are starting to follow us on the radio and online, and they're getting very interested. So that's where it's going. I mean, it's insulting, to say the least, that any of this was honoring.
It's very insulting, because let me tell you something. On the day that hearing was held, with the information, Tom, you know that I gave you the information that Don has, that Karen and I had. I gave it to Don. I gave it to others. But it was also given to Mr. Chaffetz and Mr. Issa in June of 2013. And so they had all that information.
They had all that, well, okay.
They had all that information before February 27th. And on February 27th, with that hearing going the way it did, in my opinion, Mr. Chaffetz, chairing the committee there at the hearing that day, Mr. Chaffetz, who I thought was a good congressman, became part of the cover-up. He became part of the cover-up.
Tom, and the 11 points you mentioned at page 284 of the book sort of tie into that hearing. It isn't clear to me whether Congressman Chaffetz or others took the time to read what they had been given, or whether their staffs had. I don't know. But one minor point, we don't know about the condition of the bodies. We don't know what happened. We know there was an issue of cremation, yet there was not a single question asked about what'd you do with the bodies. And we had a hearing with Mr. Reed and 4 funeral experts. So what isn't that question asked? We know that Congressman Chaffetz in July of 2013 had spoken to Bob Cusack and was reported in the Hill. He said the body I saw did not need to be cremated. So the issue had been out there for 2 years. But the congressman knew about that, obviously. I don't know what he'd read or not read. It's just hard to get people to read things, Tom. It really is. But for whatever reason, no meaningful questions were asked, and this was not an investigative committee hearing. It was ponied to something else.
It was de jure. And what I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, at 4:31, 31 minutes after the hour, Red State Talk Radio, 12 o'clock at night tonight. Right now, 30 minutes after 4 o'clock, 31 minutes after WSBR Radio. The hearing on the 27th of February 2014 was a de jure hearing. It was, what are we doing today? Oh, you got this thing over here. All right, we ready for it? Yeah, let's go in. Look, many of us, after this happened and Billy got the material into our hands, we went to our subject matter experts and they looked at it, some of whom include very significant retired generals and other officers. And they couldn't totally understand everything because the 1,200 pages was like a gigantic puzzle that you needed 5 different disciplines to work through and the time to work through it. Again, thank God for you, Don Brown. You had the skill set and the discipline to work through it, to break the code on this. But certainly a congressional hearing doesn't have the skills or the understanding to do that, which is why we need to call for a new investigation in light of the material that has been uncovered. But in this book, well, let's lay out for our new viewers and new listeners, Don, your 11 points. Just take a few minutes. And as a prosecutor, which you are and were, you served in the United States Navy in that capacity, you served in the Pentagon. As a prosecutor, lay out your opening statement as to why you think there's a possible cover-up here.
Well, there's so many inexplicable inconsistencies between the official investigative record, the Colt report, and versus what the military has said publicly. So, for example, point number one laid out here is the issue of the mysterious disappearing black box. You know, you still got us there, Tom?
Yeah. We're Mark. Hang on, watch this. Double-sided. This is the Colt report. This is the report, ladies and gentlemen, that Billy Vaughn was given by the United States government. It probably erroneously given to him, which he then gave to a few people, and it got in Don Brown's hand. And Don, did you ever print this out, or you did it on the computer?
We did print significant portions of it, and I used a combination of both the computer and hard copies.
Well, this is the whole thing.
Careful.
This thing is gigantic, and this is the case right here. I'll put it right there. Go ahead.
The inconsistency, there are numerous inconsistencies which destroy the official explanation that has been given. Now, for example, the mysterious case of the disappearing black box. All right. As you know, because you know this case, when this chopper went down, Tom, there is sworn testimony in that report, and Billy and other family members got that report after the investigation was closed. The military asked for it back, changed their mind, probably counting on nobody being able to read it. But deep within that stack of papers you just had is sworn testimony from United States Army Pathfinders. The platoon leader testifying under oath that a group of 20 Pathfinders they landed at 4:15 a.m. This chopper went down at about 2:29, almost 2:30. They landed and were immediately ordered to go find the black box, or the flight data recorder, which includes a voice data recorder and other instruments. So they spent the whole night looking for the black box, could not find it. Spent the next next day looking for it, could not find it. Okay. Finally, they concluded that it must have been washed away by a flood. The most ridiculous thing you ever hear. And so when the family members met with General Colt in October, nobody had changed that. It was washed away by the flood position. The military never backed down off that, and that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. There was a creek or a wadi in this tangy valley.
Well, there's a creek to the left. There's the creek. You can actually see the creek right above the chopper.
Now, is that out of the report, Mark, that picture?
Yeah, that's out of the report. That's a picture out of the report. Right up above the chopper there, you can see the little bitty creek that they're talking about. Now, understanding they're finding a black box, which they normally find at the bottom of an ocean, and they can't find it in a little creek.
That's true, and that's the point we make in
Hey,
the
Don,
book.
who are all those guys walking around the helicopter?
The bigger question is who are the guys walking around the helicopter beginning around 3:04 a.m. when the official report says that U.S. Army Rangers were the first to secure the scene at 4:12 a.m. We had discovered evidence that there was one unidentified unit on the ground. OS means on site at the Extortion 17 crash at 3:04 a.m. That is left out of the official report. Now, who are they? And, so the point being, it was washed away by a flood sort of narrative was never changed or corrected until the day of this hearing, February 27th, 2014, in which Mr. Gary Reed, the Assistant Deputy Vice, whatever he is, we've got his title, he's a bureaucrat in the Pentagon, testified for the first time there was no black box.
Obama appointee, 2012.
He's an appointee. So he testified there's no black box. The problem is not a single member of the Congress said, well, Mr. Reed, you say there's no black box, then why do we send a United States Army Pathfinder team looking for it for 2 days? That question wasn't asked. No question was asked. He said these choppers don't have black boxes.
Yeah.
But there's sworn testimony from that Pathfinder that this is the first time we have never been able to recover a black box.
Right.
So how does that jive what Mr. Reed is saying? Now, I've spoken with experienced military pilots who simply don't believe it. I don't believe it either.
Well, there was two choppers that day. There was Extortion 16 and Extortion 17. And Extortion 16, which was sitting right next to Extortion 16 with blades ready to go, and they loaded it all on Extortion 17. Did Extortion 16 have a black box?
No, nobody has said. That question has not been addressed, except
the
Pathfinder. At the time this chopper went down, we did some research. Out of the 26 choppers that had gone down in Afghanistan, 27, half of those were CH-47D Chinooks. The Pathfinder's job is to go and clean up the wreckage. They were looking for the black box. They said it's the first time we've never found one. Reed said because this is an older chopper, which with analog instruments, it doesn't have a black box. That is not accurate. I mean, I did some research, and I think I even put there on the Sikorsky or the Boeing website, one of the other
The Pathfinder commander also stated that 13 of those crashes were CH-47s.
Yeah.
And they all had black boxes.
Yeah, so that simply is not believable. So it's one question after the other. Here's the significance, Tom. The black box, if it had a voice data recorder in it, we could have heard what was going on inside that chopper before it was shot down. If it was infiltrated, we would know it. The other thing, or if there were some sort of mechanical issues, we would know it. So it's a no-win situation for the government. Even if it were true there weren't a black box, why are you putting an elite SEAL team on a chopper with no black box? But I just have a tough time believing there was no black box. My gut is that somebody got in and tampered with it between the shoot down and 4:12 a.m. when the Rangers first arrived.
Well, another thing about the black box.
I'll be real brief on this. The Rangers walked in by foot, okay, because they were several kilometers away. But those Pathfinders came in on a Black Hawk, okay, and they could have been there almost immediately. It was a 10-minute flight. Why were the Pathfinders delayed? And the Pathfinders did get pre-suppression fire in their landing zone as well. They should have, but it's just one question after another.
Well, I got a question about the black box, real quick.
Can I add one
It's
thing?
30.
Let me
for
say
30
one
days.
thing about.
For 30 days.
Billy, then Mark.
Right,
Hey,
good.
Billy, Mark just finished the book, so he's like,
I'm like,
Go ahead.
Let me say one thing before I forget it, because I don't think it's in the book. I have spoken to a previous pilot, a part of the flight crew of Extortion 17. Before it went, let me say this, if it didn't have a black box on it, it disappeared over there. Because when it went on the boat at Savannah, this man and members of his crew say it had the black box on it. In particular, I asked him, are you talking about the black box that that records the engine performance? He said, Mr. Vaughn, I'm talking about the black box that is actually orange that sits beside the seat.
Wow.
Those referring to his conversation with the chief warrant officer.
Wow.
One interesting thing, Tom, we're getting information we did not even have at the time the book went to press, or that would have been the book, but that's crucial. And our hope and prayers of people.
That is very crucial information.
It's there. And another thing with the black box, I know after the Malaysian air flight went down, all right, it pings for 30 days. We all know that. They sent out massive resources to go find this black box. I'm talking they sent millions of dollars, ships and everything, even with the Air I think it was Air France flight that went down the middle of the Mediterranean. They went back for years to go find this black box, and they spent incredible amount of resources. How much resources, other than the Pathfinders, has been put out there to go find this black box?
Let me answer that question. You can answer it, but I'm gonna say this: you don't need to spend any resources if you've got the black box. It's somewhere in the Pentagon.
The real issue, the crucial issue, is the timeline. Remember, the executive summary, General Colt says that the standoff on by General Mattis, that the U.S. Army Rangers, the initial assault force, arrived on the scene at 4:12 a.m. local time. That's what's in the report. But you've got to dig, and he says they were the first group to arrive and secure the scene. But you've got to dig in and find that enclosure H, which is the chronology. We know an unidentified unit was on scene at 3:04 a.m. over an hour before that. So the question is who and what were they doing, and why was not that in the final report?
Yeah, and so where are we at 41 minutes after the hour in our investigation here? We're really on the first point of 11 that Don Brown articulates in his book in chapter 55. He raises these questions and say, look, we can't, a moral, logical thinking person who has anything to do with this horrible tragedy can't walk away from this with the first question unanswered, the black box with all the question marks. And the government's answer at this point that, oh, it wasn't there after a tremendous effort initially to find it, just doesn't fly. What do you mean it wasn't there? Now we have corroboration from Billy that he spoke to people that, probably would sign affidavits and say that thing was there when it left the United States of America. This is just one issue, and we're going to go through 11 of them. We're not going to get through all of them today, but we're going to go through them to show the necessity of reopening an investigation. Let me give you Gary Reed's position. Gary Reed was the primary witness on February 27, 2014 for the United States government on this issue. He is Gary Reed, R-E-I-D. He is the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. We're not done yet. In Special Operations and Low Intensity Conflict, United States Department of Defense.
Say that again? Do they make business cards that big?
I'm not saying all of that again. But he says something, Don. I want to jump off of the sequence of your 11 questions because I wrote this down, and it was with here. I wrote down.
Tom, let me say one thing though about that title because it's bothered me ever since they said it. Low intensity conflict. Do you think the men getting out of those choppers at night and going fighting the enemy head on, close, savage combat every night, thought it was low intensity conflict?
Yeah.
No,
I know.
It's just a sidebar.
It's sad. Here's what I wrote on page 276 of this book. And if you bought one, folks, you have one. The pages aren't the same because I'm looking at it. I don't think they're the same. Are they the same? Are they numbered the same in your book and in this? Don?
I'm looking at 276, and that's the last page of chapter 53 on the final copy.
Yeah, then they are. Then they're numbered the same. Let me see if that's 53, so the audience can follow along because I know we have people. Yep, then the pages are the same. I wrote down, Gary Reed says that, and Gary Reed made this statement in the testimony on the 27th, 2014 with Chavis, that there was no switch out of the ANA. There was no switch out of the 8 Afghans, the 7 ANA soldiers, special operators supposedly, and the interpreter. Instead, the manifest, the ANA manifest, was confused with the ANA team that went out earlier with the Rangers that were already on the ground. One of you guys want to comment on that?
Well, first off, if that is his now belated explanation, the first question is this. Why was that kept out of the final report?
Yeah.
That is a major security breach. Second question is, who are the Afghans? What are their names? The third question is, who was the American officer in charge of maintaining the integrity of the manifest? Fourth question is, why do we find bullets in a couple of bodies here? We have limited access to autopsies. And why were those bullets summarily thrown away by the military pathologist at the autopsy with the doctor making a determination they're of no evidentiary value? So who are the Afghans? What are their names? And how did this happen? If you look at the sworn testimony of the J3, you've seen that. We talked about it before. Page 118 of Exhibit 1.
Yes.
Question from the interrogating officer is, tell us about the manifest. The J3, who is the operations guy for the Joint Special Operations Task Force, says, we got all the names right except the Afghans. And, and if you want my opinion on why we did that, I can go into that. And he says, but it gets cut off. But. And, I can tell you this, the families, Billy has tried to get those names. Once there's a heroic, unnamed Sergeant Major, Delta Force type, who spilled the beans on this, and God bless him, and I know he did it because he wants the truth out. So if there's a reasonable explanation for it, and maybe there is, why are you hiding the names? And why are you bringing the bodies back, the Afghan bodies back to the United States? And what did you do with them? Did you cremate them? Did you send them back to Afghanistan? Those are the types of questions that should be put to Mr. Reed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And raises more questions than he asks.
Damon's got a question, but before that, for those of you following along in our audience with our investigation in this process, and particularly those of you who are in the military, we have some folks out there. Your knee-jerk reaction would be, we can't release the names of those guys. They're the ANA. They were good guys. They're working with us. These were part of the good guys. Their families would all be killed right now by the Taliban. We can't know about all of that. What's your answer to that, Billy?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I know. What along with what Don said there. First of all, before the hearing, and here again, just like with the black box, they had 2 years to say these men were mixed up with the Rangers. The Rangers took the Rangers took the SEALs, Afghans, and blah blah blah, and all. They had 2 years to say that. Why didn't they go ahead and say that? What they did say, what was told to me 1 week before the hearing, when I was talking on the phone to Chaffetz and ICE's head guy there, when he asked me, what is one of the main questions you want answered? I said, I want to know who the 7 Afghans were. And he said, Billy, you're not going to find that out. The military has classified that answer. On the next week of the hearing, you know what Reed came out with? That they were the Rangers, guys. Now, Tom, there's a guy that y'all know that is in my first book, and when this came out, that guy was spoken to, and he said there is absolutely no way that can happen, because each group keeps track of their guys, and they're at different places. He said there's just no way that mistake could happen. One final comment on that is this is hearsay. General John Allen told Colonel Oliver North, who told a military friend of mine, a 1-star, we'll never know who the 7 Afghans are because Hamid Karzai is out of office now, and there's no way we can ever get that information. So I guess really that's all I have.
Well, they were on the
wait,
base.
everybody, hang on. Well, these guys
base.
have a million questions here. Again, it's 15 minutes after the hour. Tom Trento, Enemies of the State. We got Damon and Mark here. Don Brown right on your screen. Billy Vaughn on the left on your screen. We are continuing our weekly investigation into the shoot-down of call sign Extortion 17, shoot-down of SEAL Team 6, and the Army guys and the National Guard guys that were on board, and the dog. And one point to help the viewers and listeners understand our determination. Billy said there is a guy that, Tom, you know, that he was a little vague on that. But this is the way the world works. Ironically, a guy who was on site at this crash happens to be a friend of ours. And further information came through first-hand eyewitness accounts. So not only do we know this stuff intellectually and experientially, but we have as close to the scene of the crime as you can get first-person eyewitness information testimony. Doesn't get much better than that, does it, Counselor?
No, it doesn't. Not direct evidence.
They know who these guys are. They were on the base. They didn't just walk in from the wilds of Afghanistan and hop on a chopper. They were on the military base and got on a chopper. Give me a break. That is such.
That's a good point. They didn't just appear at the door. They had to be in the preparation room. They had to be looking at their gear together. They had to be thinking together. There were commanders there. I mean, there was a whole 3 hours before of these guys involved. Damon, you got a question?
Yeah. At the original Extortion 17 press conference a couple of years ago,
May 2013,
Alan West made it very clear that even if a congressperson were to get on a military aircraft to go to Guantanamo or anywhere, that the manifest must be changed, that no one is getting on a military whether it be helicopter or airplane, without that manifest being 100% accurate. If we had the time, I mean, I have the clip lined up, but we'll play it another day. But I mean, no matter who that person is, it could be the Speaker of the House. If they change one of their aides, that manifest has to get changed.
And this is a big deal.
It's a very big deal. And for our listeners and viewers, so that you understand the magnitude of this, even if there has to be anonymity for the 8 Afghan soldiers, even if that has to be maintained, we have a civilian-led military, and we have protocols, procedures, policies whereby very sensitive secret material can be seen by sworn officers of the state, whether they are Supreme Court officials, whether they're elected officials. There are people that can look at this, whom we've invested trust in, for them to say, okay, we understand the sensitive nature of this. There is not a cover-up. We haven't even seen this thing go that far at this point.
I have one quick question for you. And this is something that really drives me crazy, and I don't understand this one. And let's say Extortion 17 did not happen, okay? Just on pure military protocol. When they went and got bin Laden, they used the latest and greatest stealth helicopters. They had pre-planting. They didn't have any Afghans on board. They went in there, pinpoint, the same exact unit that got killed in Extortion 17, militarily wise. Now, why on God's green earth are 11 of the 17 SEAL members are the highest, most senior SEALs that we have, chief petty officers and above. Out of those people, these are the best of the best military we have. Why are these guys getting on Vietnam era helicopters that are flying targets that have a 50% shoot down range, flying into a combat mission? Who made that decision? And it's not the first time that this has happened. This has happened multiple times, flying Rangers and Navy SEALs on these old antiquated helicopters. This is an outrage just on that fact alone. Why? Why is that happening?
Well, no, that's a legitimate question. The choice of platform, it's what we're talking military, in this case the CH-47D was a platform which transported these guys in, is a legitimate question. Had they been flying an MH-47, would they have survived? It's impossible to say. I'm not optimistic that would have happened because as I said earlier, it's almost like somebody just pulled their hands away and said, have at it. Take these guys out. I mean, if the Taliban knows exactly where any chopper is coming in, and I'm convinced the Taliban was tipped. I mean, I cover this in the book. British press reported that they knew the landing zone. I did not cover this in the book, but the op-ed in the New York Post from this past Sunday covered it. The French press reported they knew where they're coming. If you know the exact landing zone, you can wait for any chopper and shoot it down. And so I agree that's a point of discussion. But I almost think that, call me cynical, but it's almost like the debate on the choice of platform here may have been inserted in the report so that we're arguing about something other than the real issue,
Right.
starting with the rules of engagement. Because I've said, Tom, that if the rules of engagement had been properly set, my grandmother could have brought that SEAL team in on a horse and buggy and put them in a landing zone, and they'd have been safe. Because they should have blasted the living heck out of that landing zone and everything around it, and that would have taken care of the problem. But it is a legitimate question on the choice of platform, and our war fighters need the best and the most modern equipment that can be provided to them.
Hey,
Now,
Don.
Well, the reason I bring that up, the reason I bring that up is because I think, in my looking at the documentation, this is the reasons for the cover-up was because they screwed this mission up from get-go, from day one, from not doing suppressive fire, from overloading the chopper, from a whole bunch of things, and they want to cover up how much they screwed this operation up from the get-go.
Start to finish, brother.
And Don, the answer that I read somewhere to one of the reasons why there was not pre-suppressive fire is because, hey, these were the SEALs. The SEALs are stealth. There had to be a very quiet entry into the landing zone. Then they operate at night. The Vietnam green face guys go in and they're invisible. What's your answer to that, Billy Vaughn?
First off, CH-47D is not going to give you a quiet landing zone. You know
It's the loudest helicopter in the world.
If you ever stand next to one, it's like.
But for somebody in the
Let me
government,
answer.
it was in one of the records I
Let me
read to
answer
say
that. That
this was a
is,
stealth
whoever
operation.
came up with that it's an outright lie, because in fact one of the changes that Colt suggests in his after investigation report is that they changed their method, because his statement is the Valley was already on high alert. There'd been a 3.5-hour operation going on, 2 AH-64s, an AC-130, and tons of gunfire in the area. So the stealthiness of the operation had been over some 3.5 hours. So, obviously the SEALs weren't the first one there. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that the jig was up. In fact, the AC-130 guy uses that. The jig was up. We didn't think it was safe to bring another chopper in. There was no secrecy about this mission. There wasn't anything about it that was secret. And for Gary Reed to even hint to that the Afghans didn't know that this operation is taking place, there again, it's a bald-faced lie, or he's just totally ignorant about the things that are going on.
The whole explanation on why you have these rules of engagement is absolute malarkey. There is no justification for these rules of engagement any way, shape, or form. If everything in my book is wrong, except for the point on the rules of engagement, I don't believe that to be a case, then it's virtually criminal to subject this team into this hot zone without pre-suppression fire.
And what we're going to do, because we're coming down to the end here, we're going to take a look in subsequent shows at the current rules of engagement, compare them to the rules of engagement 4 years ago now, quickly approaching.
Pathfinder's got suppressive fire.
Gentlemen, before we leave, in this joke of a book here, Afghanistan Honoring the Heroes of Extortion 17, essentially the transcript, in graduate school, I was a grader for the professors. I would grade the papers that the students would write, so I spent a lot of time reading, theses and all of that. And it was very easy to see when the thesis was full of feces, and that's pretty good, I just made that up. The thesis was full of, when it was just puffed up, just to puff it up. You come to the appendix here, and they put in material submitted for the hearing record. I do not believe this was presented at the hearing, but they go through, and on the next show, I'll read some of it. They go through the Army and Navy mortuary affairs protocol, and they explain how sensitive the Army and Navy is to the deceased. And they actually tell you how they have the transmission of the deceased and the handling, and all very interesting stuff. Nothing to do with an investigation of a possible cover-up of the largest loss of SEAL team life in the history of the Navy. I mean, it's a joke. It really is. But we'll look into this more. Yeah. Don, you got about 30 seconds. Billy, what do you want to leave?
The connection dropped.
Okay, well, We lost those guys, but those guys didn't lose us. We are hanging in on this.
Right.
Very, very important stuff. Each week, we'll bring you more and more and more. We'll dive in deeper and deeper and deeper. And we're praying for somebody like Don Brown in the United States government to have an epiphany, see what we see, and come along and help us do something to change the rules, change the policies in the future. And that's going to take place 509 days from today on November 16th, November 8th, 2016. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow. Jumpin' Juma Freaky Friday.